Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, more monument bills. Also, a look at GOP ballot challenges. And how does Mo Brooks really feel about Donald Trump?
Because I love you. There. I didn't mean to tell you, but you dragged it out of me. I love you.
I think I'm going to throw up in my mouth. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and today I'm joined by Susan Britt, research guru extraordinaire, and Josh Moon, political columnist and investigative reporter at APR. Welcome.
You guys.
Hello. You know, I got to put a shout out to the Gestapo police this morning.
That's the Gazpacho. The Gazpacho police.
Oh, I got it wrong.
Yeah. Protect your soups.
Okay, so the Gazpacho police. All right, I'm ignorant. I thought it was Gestapo.
No, they come for your soups.
All right, well, I knew something was going on. Interesting this week, or last week, we had several ballot challenges. This is something that happens after primaries. Republicans and Democrats can challenge the individuals on the ballot, whether they're actually a real Republican or real conservative or a real Democrat, real liberal. We had two. One was against Mike Durant. The charge against Mr. Durant is that he hadn't voted in Republican primaries and elections for a number of years, and that he was being backed by a PAC that isn't actually conservative. And also, Susan, that he denied his sister had been molested by his father repeatedly, when he knew, in fact, his father had incestuous relationships with his sister. Then we had another challenge, Josh, that the woman running in the Republican primary she gave to Democrats some 16 years ago, and that her family gave donations to some 16 Democrats some 16 years ago. Guess which challenge is going to be heard, Susan?
The one where the woman gave 16 years ago to a donation to Democrats. The Mike Durant thing, they've already killed that. Surprising? No.
Josh, in what world are we living in?
Man, I ask that every day, and I don't have good answers for that. I don't know. I read through both of those ballot challenges. I personally, I'll say this: I'm not for one for kicking somebody off a ballot. Okay, I don't care what party it is. If the person comes in and pays their dues and they want to run for office, it's up to the voters, I believe, to either vote them in or vote them out. That's personal. I think the standard for kicking somebody off the ballot ought to be way high. That said, I would probably be okay if you said you kicked somebody off for what Mike Durant has done. But that's up to the Republican Party, I guess. I just don't understand what the other lady, the wife of the mayor who's running for a House seat. I just don't understand. Draper is her name, right? Draper.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I just don't understand what she did. The last time she gave to Democrats, pretty much everybody was a Democrat. There are a lot of people who are elected as Republicans today who were Democrats at the time that she was given to Democrats. So I don't really understand what she did that was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, in 2006, I think there were a lot of Democrats. The Democrats actually controlled the Alabama House, the Senate. They did not control the governor's mansion, but that had only been for a few years that they had control of the governor's mansion. But it's just one of those unusual things, Susan, that and I'm with Josh, really. I just let him run and see what the voters think. But I just thought, you got a guy who who's being backed by a PAC that's not very conservative. He's also allegedly, as we know, what he did with his sister is just heinous character flaw.
Right.
But yeah, at least he didn't give to any Democrats.
Not surprising. This is not surprising at all.
Now, I had one political operative say that they should have based the challenge on the fact that he sounds like he's from New Hampshire, and they accused him of putting sugar on his grits. I think putting sugar on your grits.
That ought to get you kicked out of the South in general.
Honestly, I think a lot of times on these things, it comes down to who you know and how much money you can raise for the party. And I think that's a shame to operate in that fashion and to remove people from the ballot just because I think you're giving up on a lot of good people, and it's probably the reason why you're having some problems internally within the party right now.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. I want to move on to the next subject. There was a pretty substantial tax break that passed out of the Alabama Senate this week, sponsored by Arthur Orr. Interestingly, though, Susan, the tax break is for a very narrow group of people. Now, in the press release, it said it was for low-income Alabamians, but you've got to make between $50,000 and $55,000 to qualify for this tax break. Can you give us a little bit more?
Yeah, you got to make between $50,000 and $55,000 as a household. Now, the other restriction, if you read it the way it's intended, is that it's for families only. So you get a certain tax deduction if you're married filing jointly. You get a different tax deduction if you're married filing, separately. But a single parent gets nothing.
Now, Josh, I think I'm all in favor of tax breaks and all that stuff. And I kept wondering who in the world would benefit from a tax break that's between $50,000 and $55,000.
Narrow little window in there.
And it dawned on me that Alabama lawmakers, both in the House and the Senate, make $51,734 a year. Could that be a group that would benefit from this?
I guess it is. Although I think we all know that once they get there, they start somehow or another making a lot more money, even the really dumb ones. I think this is kind of a response to criticism that has come from a lot of corners of this state, Republican and Democrat, of the fact that we have received a boatload of money in this state from the federal government. And somehow or another, our Republican-led legislature has not deemed it worthy to give out a substantial tax break like has been done in several other red states. And so I think this is some sort of small piece of red meat to toss out to the base there to say, listen, we had a tax break. You didn't qualify because you didn't earn in that $4,000 gap. I'm so sorry. This is what they do. There are options here for real tax breaks and real help for families who are struggling in this state, and it's not coming because they're going to keep the money and hand it out to their buddies.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
Lindy Blanchard started out in a trailer in Wetumpka, then succeeded in business. President Trump named her our country's ambassador to Slovenia. Now she's stepping forward to fight for Alabama.
I will use my business experience to create jobs, end vaccine and mask mandates, improve our schools, and restore election security.
Driven by faith, trusted by President Trump, conservative outsider Lindy Blanchard for governor.
My dog Jupiter is frightened when I climb too high, the owl said.
Check for monsters, Daddy.
I did, honey. There are no monsters. You're perfectly safe.
Protect yourself and those you love. Vaccinate now.
So you got caught speeding. But this time you got more than a ticket.
What are you in for?
Vehicular homicide.
Stop speeding before speeding stops you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. You know, there's a lot of uncomfortable things in life and topics and things that happen to people. And we don't politicize. You generally politicize family matters that are intimate, family and health providers' decisions. The Alabama legislature has decided that they are going to stick their noses into people's intimate personal lives by passing a bill that will criminalize the treatment of transgender youth. It's got to be a difficult, heart-wrenching thing for a parent and a child to come to grips with. They have to get counseling and all that. But now the state of Alabama thinks it's their job to criminalize that, any medical help given to that child.
Yeah, any doctor that prescribes any medication or does any kind of procedures on anybody under 19 years old in the transgender world gets 10 years in prison. It's a Class C felony, according to this bill, and would render them 10 years in prison.
Josh, I always thought that the Republican Party stood for less government and not intruding in people's personal lives, but this is nothing more than big government coming in and telling parents how they should treat their children and doctors how they should treat their patients.
Yeah, it's a vilification of doctors, is what it is. It is saying to people that there are doctors out there in the world that are doing harm to children on purpose and do not have the best interest of the children at heart. And that the Alabama legislature, in its infinite wisdom, it knows better than the doctors who are working one-on-one with these children about what is necessary and what is needed and what would best serve that child. That, if you say that out loud, you know how idiotic that is. That is, I mean, it's moronic to think that the Alabama legislature, with a blanket coverage of this, is doing any better for these children than the doctors that are treating them on a daily basis. And what you're doing, and they know this, what they're doing is they're putting at risk some of the most high-risk children in the world for suicides and for death. But their attitude is, piss on those kids. We got elections to win. And this is good red meat because people eat this up because we believe that there are evil doctors out there that are turning little boys into little girls just for fun on a whim. And it's nonsense. It's not happening, and it's stupid.
No child wakes up and one day goes to their mom and dad and goes, you know, I've been a girl for 13 years, but I've decided I want to be a boy.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
And parents don't treat it that way. Yeah, and parents don't treat it that way. I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, what? It's so stupid. I mean, imagine this scenario. What scenario goes on in this world inside of your stupid head that this is a scenario that happens in the real world? Just stop.
It's not. I mean, but if we go down this road of who can get medical treatment and who can't, who's to say that somewhere along the line they won't decide that Granny is too old to get end-of-life care?
Right.
I mean, that's just a reality. We're going to pull the plug on Granny. We're not going to treat her anymore because we've decided we can save money. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how far it goes.
It's not ludicrous in the way they think. It's really not.
No, it's not ludicrous because not too long ago they were trying to deny gay people care. So it's not that ludicrous to think of it. No, it's not.
And we've got people running for office saying that there's all these genders and there's all this stuff.
I think Tim James said 50 genders.
Yeah, I mean 50 genders, whatever. I don't know how many genders there are. I always thought it was just 2, but evidently
I'd like to hear him name
them. I don't know. Again, this is intimate family decisions. These are hard choices. These are not easy. Nobody wants to go through this. Anyway,
and a teenager that feels alienated already just for being a teenager is going to be further alienated.
Yeah. Highest rate of suicide in among teens, this type of nonsense. Well, it's Groundhog Day all over again, or as Yogi Berra said, it's deja vu all over again. Josh, there are more monument bills, and we've got to punish people who touch our monuments.
Yes. Well, we got to keep those monuments up because we want to honor history and teach history. But you can't tell what any of the people in those monuments did in the classroom because that's critical race theory. So, yeah, it's quite the little...
Good point.
Yeah, it's quite the little problem they've created for themselves.
I know you can't talk about the monuments because that could lead to critical race theory, or as one new bill says, Josh, what is it now? It's not disturbing concepts, but it's
certain concepts. Certain concepts. Yeah, based on religion, race, or gender. Yeah, you can't talk about certain concepts. Yeah.
I mean, Susan, I don't know how you teach education and avoid certain concepts.
Well, it's just typical of the Alabama legislature. They stick a word in there that means anything you want it to mean, so you can bend it any way you want to bend it and back up and go, oops.
Now,
yeah, I've heard a lot of times that the problem with Alabama schools is that they're teaching too much stuff.
No, yeah, well, that's really the problem. Gazpacho police. Okay, so I mean, they're going to change the fine, and
it goes from $25,000 to $5,000 a day.
Right.
That's for the monument.
And
it's for monument.
That's for the monument. That's for the monument, and it's you get more penalties if you damage a monument during a legitimate political discussion.
Yeah. You remember like about a year ago when we pretended for 15 minutes that we were going to start caring about the feelings of black and other minorities, black people and other minorities in this country?
Right.
You remember
right.
that? It went on for like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, the thing is, the Republican Party, the RNC, has said that the insurrection, the riots on January 6th, were an act of legitimate political discourse. So going down to take down a monument and rioting over it would just simply be legitimate political discourse.
Oh, well, they've already got that fixed, though. They've got the riot bill coming.
Well,
so,
the riot bill is passed out of committee, but I mean, come on, is it legitimate political discourse, or is it a riot? It looked like a riot to me.
Yeah.
It did to me too. I certainly think.
You can't be a riot. Those are all white people. You can't be a riot with white people. Come on.
So you can only have a riot if you have black people in it.
If you have 2 or more black people, that constitutes a riot. But if you have all those white people beating cops to death, not a riot. Legitimate political discourse.
And if you think they won't, judge it that way, you're wrong, because they will.
Surely it's not.
It's that open.
Surely not. All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics. Is there a cross on the line?
If not, then
We'll
we'll
be
be
right
about
back.
5 minutes.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
My dog Jupiter is frightened when I climb too high, the owl said.
Check for monsters, Daddy.
I did, honey. There are no monsters. You're perfectly safe.
Protect yourself and those you love. Vaccinate now.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. You know, we've got a sort of a contest going on in the Senate race, not one that you would normally think about, but part of the what's going on is who loves Trump the most. Mm-hmm. And it seems like Mo Brooks loves Trump the most because he's got Trump's endorsement. I mean, it's not like he's ever said that Trump was evil. He's never said anything like that. He's dishonest. Mo Brooks has never said anything negative about Donald Trump. We know that. But everybody's running to be loved. But I think Mo Brooks has his puckered lips very close to Donald Trump's hairspray or somewhere. and he's loving Trump. But I don't believe a thing Mo Brooks said. I don't believe Mo Brooks loves anybody but himself, Susan.
Well, if you look back a little bit, before it was important to love Trump, he was saying things like, I don't think you can trust Donald Trump with anything he says, and things like that he didn't trust him. He wasn't going to vote for him. But you got to, and then he got elected, and then it was a love fest.
Yeah, well, yeah. Josh, it's just, how low will people go? I mean, is there any bottom anymore?
No.
Pandering? No.
No, there's not.
No.
There once was a bottom, but they dug through it to get to the other side. And it's, really, it's so hard to do this because, it's, when I hear the comments from Mo Brooks, I can't help but think, my God, I agree with Mo Brooks. Trump cannot be trusted. He is dishonest. He did flush documents down the toilet at the White House residence. Those things did occur, and then it's just it's so exhausting to watch them chase votes on such pandering, superficial idiocy. And when, if you would just stand for what you believe in and tell people that, and either you get elected or you don't, and if you don't, you go back home and you get a real job, for God's sakes. But
do the voters really know which Mo Brooks they're going to be voting for in the primary? Which one? The one that doesn't trust Trump, or the one that you got to make a decision in there, folks.
Well, and I think this is we'll move on from this, and I think this is a problem that we see all the way around, because right now people aren't paying attention, and generally people don't pay attention to elections. They vote for whoever they're familiar with, or they hear one thing that they've said and they're all for them, or they get a Trump endorsement. But the real thing that voters should be asking serious questions, and we in the media don't do that either the way we should. What is your platform? What will you do for Alabama? What will you do for working men and women? And we don't hear a lot of that, Josh. All we hear is sloganeering, and then pander to the base either way. I mean, we just don't hear anybody saying, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, what we've allowed, honestly, and I'll say this, it's on voters, because, and I made this argument, and I'll tell you what, to ease the pain, I'll make the argument for sports that I used to make, where sports started this, where they divided up into their fan bases, and they started going to message boards and to fan sites, which delivered them news that they want to hear. They delivered to them things that were team friendly. The coach liked talking to the guy that run the message board, and so he would tell them things about the team that were all positive and great and wonderful, and everybody could go and talk about these things. But what that did was it filtered out the independent voice that would hold people accountable, that would ask the tough questions. And then when you started asking tough questions, you became a hater. You became somebody who was biased against you. And that's what's happened today, where we have divided up to the edges in our media. And people have chosen to covet things that they want to hear. Fox News, for example, every night, or MSNBC for that matter, although I don't think they're quite as bad. But I do think that Fox News and MSNBC are at the corners of this thing. And so you go to those things because you want to hear stuff about the others, bad things about the other side, good things about your side. And in the meantime, the truth kind of gets lost in the shuffle somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Well, I know sometimes I get pushed back and say, well, why are you picking on Republicans? I'm not picking on Republicans, but the Republicans are in charge in Alabama.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, to go after Democrats, they can't do anything, Susan.
No.
The Democratic Party has no power in Alabama.
They're
to
not
speak
even
of.
really running anybody in the primaries this time. I mean, they're just like kind of non-existent
I mean,
right now.
how can you be critical? How can you analyze? And most of the time, being critical is really analyzing what they're doing. They just take it as criticism. You can't analyze it. But right now, we look at the people running for office, and we cannot analyze their position on things because they don't give us anything to look at. It's just all talk. And you know, moderate candidates are moving to the left, moving to the right. Liberal candidates are moving to the whatever. You know, you get candidates all over the board that have to pander to a very narrow sliver of the party.
But there's no policies out there to discuss. Nobody's giving you anything to actually discuss except for how liberal are you? How conservative are you? Are you conservative, a conservative, a conservative? You know,
I mean, look at the bills that are being talked
you?
about. I mean, really, look at the bills that are being talked about. None of them address real problems, you know? None of them address real issues that are going on here.
It's back to the bill to give a tax break to people making $50,000 to $55,000. I mean,
only married people, don't forget.
well, no, it's lower income people. I mean, but the mean salary, take the high, take the low, is $50,000 a year in Alabama. Per capita, it's $27,000 a year. So almost you think a family that's making $50,000 ain't on low income in Alabama.
No.
Low income is making $13,000.
They're doing nothing to help them, nothing.
But again, these are policies that are pandering. These are not policies that do anything while we still have a grocery tax, Josh.
Yeah. You want to help families? Kill the grocery tax, man.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just there are so many things. You raise the Medicaid threshold. You know, hell, expand Medicaid. You know, I don't know, help everybody for God's sakes. You know, it just those sorts of things. They're boring. All right, that's what they are. They're boring. They're boring things to talk about. It's a boring job to go up there and to do the job that you're supposed to do. I'll say this, there are a lot of people on both sides of the aisle who go up there and do that. You never hear from them. They don't say anything. Right. They never get into any trouble. Right. They never do any BS. They just go up there and they do the job and they go home to their families every weekend. And those people, we should start treating a little better than we do, I think.
I agree. Well, we're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.